Everybody, Steve Colescott here for Elitefts.com. We're doing another segment of Video Inquisitions, this time with Michael Stuchiner, also known as Paper. Paper, as a master herbalist, what herbs would you recommend for someone that is that's on some type of fat loss program? And by what mechanism do each of these herbs work?
As far as herbs for fat loss, I have to be honest when I tell you that this is not particularly my forte. I never really dipped my feet into this particular area of herbal medicine. It's never been something I've taken that great of an interest in when it comes to herbs. Not to say that there aren't plenty of herbs, I'm sure that will work well for that. But from what I've seen, there is just a tremendous amount on nutrition and training on how to reduce body fat. So for something like that, I think you're probably best off staying as simple as possible with your nutrition.
Okay, and since herbs were our original medicines, and some of them have drug-like effects, are there also side effect concerns, particularly with these fat loss type of herbs?
As far as side effects of what would be considered fat loss herbs or thermogenic herbs, I'm going to go back to my original statement that I made earlier in this interview regarding standardized versus or isolated herbs versus whole herbs. The truth is that when you're dealing with a whole herb, you're not going to see any real side effects from it because it's a perfectly balanced herb. But when you're dealing with a standardized herb, because of the fact that it has been thrown out of balance and because you're isolating one or more of the chemical constituents to make it into a completely different herb, really more of a drug, that's when you're going to see more of the side effects, the cardiovascular issues and whatnot. I'd actually like to give a really good example of this. We all know about ephedra, I'm sure, and if you haven't, I'm sure you can look it up because there's a ton of information on ephedra. Ephedrine is the active ingredient found in the herb ephedra, okay? And the reason why ephedra was originally taken off the market was because the claim was made that ephedra can kill people and giving them heart attacks and cardiovascular events. Therefore, the FDA decided to pull the herb off the market. The problem is that when the herb was left in its whole form before it became standardized, there was not a single side effect that went along with ephedra. And on top of the fact, on all of those claims that people said ephedra did to them, the truth is that none of those bottles or none of those products had the whole ephedra herb in it. They all had the standardized ephedra herb with a large amount of ephedrine. Okay? Therefore, what ended up happening was that these people were taking the drug ephedrine, okay, which is by definition actually still on the market, even though that was the chemical constituent that gave people the problem. So the point I'm making is that when you took the herb from its whole form and made it into an isolated herb, again, you've now made into more of a dangerous drug, and now you have caused it to be pulled off the market. So when we talk about side effects of thermogenic herbs or these weight loss herbs or fat burning herbs, the reason why so many people have such a controversial issue with them is because most of them are not used in their whole herb form.
And with the compounds that you mentioned, should they be used isolated, just one at a time, or is there some synergistic effects from using a couple of them together? How would you recommend that?
As far as using herbs as individual herbs versus a formula, that would really depend upon, in terms of effectiveness, that would really depend upon what you're using the herbs for, what the purpose is, okay? Most of the time, most herbs used in formula are a much more powerful way, but there are a much more powerful way of using herbs. But there are exceptions to that rule where you're dealing with one specific individual herb that has more of a whole body effect, and those are known as tonics or adaptogens. Things like rhodiola, or maybe even some of the different types of ginsengs, or ashwagandha, or sesandra root. These are all considered tonic herbs that help to allow the body to deal with the stresses that it goes through on a daily basis. You might also know the term, like I mentioned before, adaptogens. I'm a big fan of adaptogens. They're just wonderful for helping to support the body. Another one is even licorice root, which is another one of my favorite adaptogens as well. But as far as one versus another in terms of formula versus an individual herb, again, that would really depend upon what your end result goal is. If you're looking to deal with a specific organ system, and you want to support the other organs, the rest of the body's organs around it, then a formula would be in your best interest. But if you're looking for more of a general tonic, then an individual adaptogen will work perfectly fine as a single entity or a single herb.